I'm Brian Foster, and this is the Grindhouse Institute. On each episode of this podcast, Jeremy Floyd and I program a triple feature movie night. Each of the movies share common themes, and we discuss them here. We're happy you could join us for today's block we call Read After Burning. Our adventures through cinema continue as we head into the years 2008 and 2009 with a trio of dark comedies that had me literally at times doubled over with laughter. At first it was the jokes that had me tickled, the quick timing, the visual gags, but soon after completing all three, and even more so after talking about these films with Jeremy, I was struck with an epiphany. I've met versions of all these characters in real life. We've all met people like this, and it's a possibility that some of you listeners are these people, and that's cool. No judgment here. The co-workers, the managers, the family members, and friends who all seem to continue to do or say the wrong things in life, make outrageous and irrational decisions, and all the while wondering why they're not getting what they're owed. They are truly heroes of their own stories. Today's block of films are all a comical look at the deep state, the unelected institutional underpinnings of our society, and the self-dealing narcissistic assholes who run said state. Since everyone in these bureaucracies share these fun-loving traits, the only way to tell these stories is to do so from an ironic distance, and of course to make it funny as hell. Linda Litsky and Chad Feldheimer think their lives have changed when they stumble on a CD-ROM containing the memoirs of former CIA analyst Osborne Cox. Their plan? Hold the disc ransom so Linda can get their life-changing cosmetic surgery she just so desperately needs. Throw in George Clooney as an overly paranoid, adulterous treasury agent who is secretly building a homemade sex machine, and you have the makings of 2008's Burn After Reading. When Simon Foster, a mid-level British government stooge, is asked about the rumblings of the UK and US entering a war in the Middle East, his response, "War is unforeseeable." Now, having more or less confirmed war, the two countries mobilize in what is clearly the blueprint for HBO's Veep. Armando Iannucci directs this incredibly fast-paced, laugh-a-second script that was nominated for a Best Adapted Screenplay Academy Award, 2009's In the Loop. Mark Whitaker, a VP-level employee at Archer Daniels Midland, lies his way into becoming a star witness for the FBI by exposing a price-fixing scam. When the FBI uncover more of his lies, including embezzlement, his dreams of becoming Agent 0014 are put on hold. Matt Damon plays the titular role brilliantly in the 2009 film, The Informant. Thank you for listening to the Grindhouse Institute. Please enjoy.
What did we learn, Palmer?
I don't know, sir.
I don't fucking know either. I guess we learned not to do it again.
Yes, sir.
I'm fucked if I know what we did.
Yes, sir. It's hard to say.
All right, welcome back, everyone, to the Grindhouse Institute. It's great to see you all. I'm Brian Foster. With me, as always, is Jeremy Floyd. How are you?
Yeah, doing all right. Doing all right.
Just all right?
Just.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of improving, like episode to episode. Sometimes you're fine. Sometimes you're just all right. We're gonna get over the hump, and it's gonna be a good day.
Bit,
Yeah, sure. We are back with another episode of the Grindhouse Institute. Today we are going to be talking about, you guessed it, 3 films, starting with The Informant and In the Loop and Burn After Reading.
Yeah.
This was a really fun block, and why did we put these films together, Jeremy?
Well, yeah, it's originally we kind of were talking about The Informant, and we were kind of talking about it in a whistleblower context.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we should definitely explore that again. But as we're going through Informant, it started to become clear, oh, maybe this is exploring something else. It's shedding a light on this, type of mindset and this experience of the failing upwards, no consequences, right? So you're doing everything wrong, all these things just magically open doors for you, and this very specialized way of seeing and viewing the world, and well, wait a minute, why is this happening to me? I'm the good guy here, right? You are always the good guy in your story, no matter how wrong you are. And that, concept, I felt like it was kind of explored around this time a lot with, Burn After Reading, which came out the year before Informant, In the Loop, which came out, a week before The Informant, and then The Informant itself. And it's like, all these movies, or most of these movies, kind of came out after sort of the early 2000s, like the sort of George W. Bush years, right? But they all were sort of exploring, the American idea at that time. In the Loop was able to do it with sort of a remove, with the sort of British perspective, but sort of all three of these films, capture like that sort of zeitgeist, that time and space of the latter day Bush years, like heading out of Bush into the recession. And before the Obama years came in.
Very interesting. And for being such such a heavy concept, these are all comedies. Like let's just get this out there. They are told in incredibly funny ways.
Exactly. And that's pretty much the only way to explore
take
this.
Yeah, to take it, to understand it, I agree. But I mean, very hilarious films. Each of these, I'm glad we made the change because I haven't laughed during one of our blocks like this in a long time, especially going through In the Loop. I'm a big Veep fan, and this was great to see kind of the blueprint, I guess, for Veep.
Like almost the pilot or something. It's like, did you ever see before Curb Your Enthusiasm? They did like an hour special or whatever for HBO. It was basically Larry trying to figure out what the show would be, and you could kind of feel Iannucci doing the same with In the Loop here, and it kind of became this like bridge between the thick of it, his British show, and Veep, which became the HBO mega hit. Is it a mega hit? I don't know. It's a critical hit anyway.
Critical hit for sure. And it was on for, 9 seasons or 8 seasons. I mean, it was on for quite some time. So I would say it's quite a hit. Well, I guess each of these kind of have their own group that they discuss. But mostly, Burn After Reading and The Informant touch on mostly the FBI in terms of when you're saying some of the higher ups. Is that right? Or am I following that correctly?
Yeah. Well, Burn After Reading, the J.K. Simmons story and the David Rasche, I'm not sure how to say his name, but he was in both this and In the Loop.
And in Veep.
They're in the CIA.
Right, yeah. The agency.
There's, a lot of bureaucratic government agencies that have a lot of sort of, spying and surveillance powers and whatever else. And you're kind of like seeing both the bureaucracy, the idiocy in and outside of the agencies. And they all kind of like, they definitely touch on these things. Each one of the films, how governing powers that be, like the bureaucracy there, the backbiting and self-dealing and some of the other things, both, like I said, inside the agencies and outside of it. And even though, just to kind of tie it back to what we were saying a minute ago about like the time and place these movies came out in, even though The Informant, takes place in the early 90s, the sort of sensibility of it is very much of the late 2000s, when the movie came out, essentially.
Mm-hmm, right.
It didn't have a early 90s like sensibility. It had a late 2000s sensibility. So it definitely captures that that zeitgeist of that moment.
Early 90s storyline, late 2000s sensibilities, and then a 1960s soundtrack. And it was like a James Bond
right.
kind of, which they come back to as one point with the 0014 joke, which that movie cracked me up. Absolutely fun. Well, we could go through any of these movies. I know we've been going like movie to movie with these kinds of things, but maybe we should just kind of switch things up and just kind of get into them as a whole. But I would like to start with Burn After Reading. Just because
let's do it.
I had seen this movie originally when it came out, but obviously had a new appreciation for it. And Ozzy Osbourne Cox is one of my favorite characters on screen. I think Malkovich is John Malkovich is amazing, first of all, and I think he's just really funny when he really lays it into somebody and tells basically to fuck off as hard as he can. And
the scene where he first gets the phone call.
Who the fuck are you?
Yeah,
exactly. It's the phone call scene when he just gets set off because he's getting woken up in the middle of the night.
Your shit.
And Brad Pitt is the goofiest. His name's Chet, I think. It's Chet. So it's like this guy is like the epitome of the trainer at 24-hour fitness. That's just giving you the old
frosted tips and
exactly.
finger guns and
finger guns. Yeah.
He's always got his iPad going or iPad. Hello. What year is this?
Osborne Cox, as he's known as Ozzy by his coworkers and wife. He's let go from the CIA. He was in the CIA, correct? And he was let go from the agency for a drinking problem, which compared to...
Well, actually, it's like he was transferred to some other sector.
Right, not
and he
let
didn't
go.
like it, so he quit.
Sorry, yeah, that's exactly right. He was going to be moved with with lesser security clearance.
Instead of waiting to get a pension and just just
wait it
sailing
out.
through his career. No, he's like, fuck it, I quit. Like, well, what are you gonna do now? It was like George getting fired and had nothing. He's like, it's like, yeah, I like sports. How about I be a sports announcer?
He went out pretty hard too. Ozzy didn't like this, demotion by any means. He called it a crucifixion in that great explosion that he gets. It's great.
I love how Malkovich's plan is to write his memoir.
His memoirs. He must have found my memoirs.
Some clown or two clowns have gotten hold of my memoirs.
Your what?
But we're in this movie as, typical of, I would say, not typical, but I mean, as indicative of a Coen Brothers movie. We meet a lot of interesting characters, and we meet George Clooney right off the bat. He's a U.S. Marshal. Just because that guy's allowed.
Treasury agent. So he was Secret Service at one point. And...
Okay, so he's allowed to carry a gun with the most paranoid tendencies I've ever seen in a character.
Yeah.
Almost to an annoying level. And this guy is literally the worst human being on the planet, by the way. He can cheat and cheat and cheat. His incredibly paranoid, and then the second he finds out that his wife wants to divorce him for infidelity, he's broken down, it's the worst thing that ever happened. Right, and then he goes and has sex with another woman.
Well, he's got to fill that hole in his heart, I guess.
He also has to fill that lactose reflux that he has from eating certain things.
I love how he kept screwing those phrases up.
And then, Malkovich calls him on. He's like, are you saying that you are lactose intolerant and you have acid reflux? Or you're just putting them together?
Right. I mean,
I could get anaphylactic shock. Or
that kind of thing is this guy has an impression of himself as sort of, smart, and he's got it figured out, and he's going to do this, he's going to do that, he's going to go for a run, and he's got his sex machine figured out that
he saw it in a gentleman's magazine.
Instead of paying thousands of dollars, what he got for a $1.25, got slide rails or whatever.
Wait, what he's like not including the price of the dildo. Those things are really expensive.
I mean, I can't mold my own rubber over here, but the point is that he's got this impression of himself, just like the Brad Pitt character, or even the Malkovich character, even what's her name, Frances McDormand's character, a little bit, where it's
Linda Litsky.
Yeah, Linda Litsky, and or Matt Damon's character in The Informant. It's all of them have this impression of themselves and sort of what's possible and what is sort of owed to them, by them, continually fucking up or, doing the wrong thing all the time. And, they are the hero of their own story. So, everything should be working out for them. Why isn't it working out? And that him screwing up the idioms all the time, but not sort of, realizing he screwed it up, or even when it's pointed out to him, he's like, no, I don't think so. And just moves on. It's it is sort of perfectly embodying this type of character, right? And it is great to how well they get it to work with the Clooney character in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody in this movie individually was incredible, and I think Linda Litsky and her motivation, working in this hard bodies gym, wanting to take the next step in transforming her image with liposuction, rhinoplasty, getting the breasts done, getting this vaccine scar removed. Like there's just this list of things she wants. I think it's 4 total surgeries that she wants to get money for, but now her motivation becomes, well, let's find this guy's memoirs and basically hold them ransom. After Chet, the janitor finds them. I think the custodian finds them in the locker room.
They were just lying there.
Just lying there.
They're so good at like getting these like tiny little nothing characters to like really hit that joke so well.
They get their close-ups, right? Like,
yeah.
And I thought when Chet finds this thing, he goes from being like that really in-your-face, always chewing gum trainer kind of guy that's constantly listening to music and jamming out to it. Then all of a sudden he kind of gets on this voice that he thinks he has to be, like he needs to be that character in order to talk to Ozzy or Osborne Cox. Is this Osborne Cox? Yes, it's fucking Osborne Cox. We are past that.
Osborne Cox?
Yes. This is... Hello, it's Osborne Cox. Who the fuck are you?
Yeah, I was a big fan of watching this. It cracked me up, and for being a really funny movie, it takes a dark ass turn, and when it takes that turn, it's immediately cleaned up. Like, as they clean it up in the story, like, that darkness is gone. It's just J.K. Simmons, burn the fucking body, get it the fuck out of here. We're not going to deal with that right now, Like, and he goes, come back to me when it...
Christ, no. Yeah.
He's like, come back to me when it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. And we'll interface with the FBI on this dead body.
No, God, no. We don't want those idiots bumbling around in this. Burn the body, get rid of it. And keep an eye on everyone. See what they do. Report back to me when, I don't know, when it makes sense.
Exactly. Even though it like removes you from the immediacy of the story or whatever, and the characters experiencing this, there is something like kind of interesting about that, like the Shakespearean chorus that those 2 upper CIA guys end up sort of playing, which is they kind of give these like weird summaries, like sort of at different points of the movie of like what's happening, and like because the Coen brothers are like geniuses at being able to work that dialogue into something funny, like they're like the Christ no, burn the body, like it's so hilarious
because don't involve the FBI, God no.
It's like those idiots, like
those idiots.
But like, so you were saying, like, I mean, you were enjoying it this time around, but the first time you saw it, not so much.
I mean, I guess it was probably one of those times where it was a Coen Brothers movie, and I needed to see a Coen Brothers movie because I love movies and all this stuff, and I probably just didn't fully watch it. It was probably at a friend's house or something. I don't remember exactly, and I am 2008. Yeah, it was probably somebody came by and watched it. I mean, I probably wasn't even paying attention, but now it's I thought it was great.
Yeah, I had kind of a the same reaction to it. Like, I felt like with Intolerable Cruelty and Lady Killers, they had kind of like, lost their edge or whatever. And then they, came back firing both barrels with No Country. And this is their follow-up to No Country. And it was like, it wasn't, landing for me. And like, and I think, watching it again, like, I did enjoy it a lot more this time. I mean, I remember really not liking it the first time. It still isn't quite up there for me to like their like the level of like film that I expect from them.
They've created a pretty high bar.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I actually ended up enjoying it a little better this time. What I felt like just sort of overall, it was like kind of a tonally speaking, kind of a spiritual sequel to Fargo in a way, where it's like they kind of have that really crazy absurd situations, silly and it's like quirky crazy characters, and then also just like some like really grim moments and like the the ominous score of it all and everything. But unlike Fargo, where they really were able to sort of like really thread that needle, this one that it didn't quite like hit exactly the way that Fargo did. And okay, when that happens, then you're sitting there like it either needs to work perfectly or you're going to end up being disappointed, which is kind of what this one was. It's like, it has these like really great individual moments and whatever, but like kind of the feeling as a whole, as you're like, rolling the credits, you're like, okay, well,
I feel like
it didn't quite stick the landing.
Like you said, the individual moments, I think it's because we didn't really focus on one hero in this one, and no one is really that likable in this one. They're all kind of dicks in a way.
Like you have to have that ironic remove from all the characters, whereas like with Fargo,
you have Frances McDormand.
You have Frances McDormand, her husband, even the Jerry Lundegaard character in a way, because you kind of feel bad for him because he's always like the butt of everyone's jokes, and he's just like a complete schlub. And, in a way, you end up, feeling sorry for him, even though he's despicable in most ways. Same with even the little fella, the Steve Buscemi character, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like he also, maybe the not getting the respect from these people and whatever. There's a certain like level of humanity that you're getting out of him and feeling bad for him in a certain way, so that it kind of offsets some of the despicableness. And like in this one, it's like you weren't given a whole lot to cling on to with many of these characters. I mean, maybe the Frances McDormand character, she has a lot of stuff you can kind of sympathize with in a way, but it's more like the Jerry Lundegaard character, where okay, you feel bad for her in certain ways, but then she's just, they're so horrible and like doing these terrible things and continuing to like make it worse.
Her methods are not that great, right? Yeah.
That like it's like, okay, well, this movie didn't have the Margie
right
to like kind of bind everything together and allow the audience to cling on to something there.
Yeah, I think that is exactly what it was, and it almost became anthology-like in a way, and we were just watching, these tiny stories of the hard bodies people, and we were watching the story of, Clooney and in his basement tinkering away with this giant sex toy, and then his marriage life and triangles that he's in. Tilda Swinton was absolutely incredible in this, but then her connection to Ozzy, and then Ozzy, all this was built on a matter of confusion. And I think part of the movie, because it was based in confusion, there were parts of it where I was just like kind of thrown back a little bit, and maybe that's why I didn't care for it the first time, because because there was no one to hold on to kind of bring you through everything. Instead, it was just kind of like jumping to lily pad, Yeah,
exactly. And in some of their other movies where they have really complicated plots, like Miller's Crossing or even Big Lebowski, you still have these other things to cling on to. Like, even if maybe you don't quite understand all, like, how this connected to that, this connected to who said this and what they thought of it when they heard it. Even if every like piece of that detail isn't there, like, because some of these other things are satisfying, and because the characters themselves are satisfying, and someone that you can connect with, it allows you to kind of like gloss over some of the finer details of like, well, wait, what was happening with the John Turturro in Miller's Crossing, and like, his plan was so convoluted and crazy. Whereas this one, it didn't quite have that stuff there, and because of that, you're sitting there the whole time like having that ironic distance, like you are basically the J.K. Simmons character watching this thing. You're like, wait, what? And what did the idiot do? No, Christ, no, burn the body. I don't care.
Maybe he's the one. Yeah, he's the one speaking for the audience. He's the only one that I kind of agreed with. I'm like, this started from nothing. This guy got demoted. He quit. He wanted to write a memoir. His wife wants to divorce him, so she's instructed by her lawyer to grab his financials so he can find out exactly how much she's going to make from this divorce settlement.
Yeah.
That memoir or those financials are found in this gym locker from her. It's her bag, I believe, that they find it in. Mm-hmm. And then that's when they find the signals and intelligent shit, and the numbers and dates and numbers.
The lawyer's secretary or whatever, like
she left
her
it
gym
there.
bag. Yeah.
That's what it was, because she was going to deliver it, and they were going to look through the evidence, right? But I mean, it's bullshit information. It was nothing information. It was like
was just lying there. Yeah, exactly. and obviously it turned out to be nonsense, and like, it wasn't the raw shit, the real shit.
Numbers and dates and numbers and numbers and dates and numbers and I think that's the shit, man. The raw intelligence.
The best line was when Chet finally meets up with Ozzy, and he's like, Osborne Cox? He's like, yes, and you must be Mr. Black. Come on, man. It was so great. That movie that they kept repeating, that Frances McDormand kept going to, that was starring Dermot Mulroney and Claire Danes.
The Pushing
Coming
Up
Up
Daisy, or
Daisy.
whatever. Pushing Daisy. What was it called?
Yeah. I had Coming Up Daisy. It might be Pushing
Coming Up
Daisies,
Daisy. Yeah.
But like, yeah, she was waiting for whoever she's on the date with to laugh at that one shitty joke that happens in the movie.
Right. Would you come down here?
But yeah, I think you're right. I think this is a Coen Brothers movie that they really nail those individual moments. But you're right. I think that, this one really doesn't have that spine to bring us through. But overall, I was laughing my ass off during this movie and thought it was really well done and shot really well. It looked very nice. I thought it was going to be a Deakins. Doesn't Roger Deakins usually do this? But this was Lubezki, Emmanuel Lubezki.
Right, Chivo shot this one, and apparently I think Deakins was on another film at the time. Maybe it was one of the Sam Mendes. Was it Revolutionary Road? I think that was it. But anyway, unavailable. So they got someone also amazing.
I was going to say, yeah, they did okay with the substitute. Yeah. Cool. Let's want to move on to another film. We want to talk more about Burn After Reading.
No, good to move on. Yep.
Okay. So let's go into In the Loop. Again, before we got online here, it was probably a couple hours ago that I finished this movie, like 10:30 or so. And my face hurt after watching this movie because I was laughing just as much as I laugh at Veep. Like,
yeah.
First of all, I was shocked. I don't know how the hell someone cuts this thing, shoots this thing, directs this kind of thing. Like, it's got to be a madhouse, like, on set.
Right.
But for some reason, it comes together and everything is captured so properly. This was 2 thumbs up for me, man. This was great. And Peter Capaldi fucking wins everything.
That guy, oh my God. He was so nuts.
Malcolm, was that his name? Yeah.
I'm not even going to try to remember any of his like, just long tirades and like just string of insults.
Get me fucking Brian. If you don't get me fucking Brian, I'm going to come over there. I'm going to lock you in a fucking flotation tank and pump it full of sewage until you fucking drown.
So funny. And again, a movie that is based on one person using a word that was it was like based in one question and one answer that was given for the unforeseeable, or war is unforeseeable, I believe is the word, the specific trigger word, unforeseeable. And that was when Malcolm Capaldi comes in, he's like, in the words of the late great Nat King Cole, unforeseeable.
It's like, well, we are climbing the mountain of descent, or whatever it is.
It becomes
of conflict. Climbing the mountain of conflict.
It becomes a bumper sticker at one point.
Right.
So anyway, this guy Simon Foster, who is literally a meat puppet from the beginning, and they literally call him a meat puppet by the end of it, or by the middle of it, is giving an interview, and this interview is literally asking, do you think we're going to war? And he represents the British government.
Right. Yeah. So the Secretary of State in England is giving some interview. He gets like hit with a question, and didn't have that scenario worked out in his PR coaching beforehand, and says like I think not inconceivable, what was the word? It was like
unforeseeable.
Unforeseeable. Yeah, exactly. Like because the director of communications for the prime minister, the Peter Capaldi character, knows that everyone's like pushing for this war, this strangely unnamed war that couldn't possibly be the Iraq war. The war that they're all gearing up to do, the U.S. government and then the U.K., which will rubber stamp it in the UN for them. The Peter Capaldi character knows that like that's where they're headed, so that this stupid idiot shouldn't be gumming up the works with his unforeseeable comment. And again, it's very much just how we're sucked into the vortex of like all these idiots trying to create the Iraq war out of nothing,
fabricate it,
and for at least not the stated reasons that we were all sort of given. and that everyone's like has their own careers in mind, and covering their asses and whatever else, and like, well, I want to look good, I'm gonna be the general who doesn't want this, but I'm not gonna resign. Wouldn't it be better to rebel from the inside and like and continue to like fight this on the inside? Like
it's all perception. It's all public perception.
Yeah, it's like
it's ridiculous.
Lying to yourself, lying to everyone else, and like and meanwhile, like this like war that didn't need to happen, it is slid through on the like lubricated chute, and it's like it's like always going to happen, and the machinations of everyone else, they're all kind of like running around trying to either do things, not look bad, get reelected, whatever. They're always like scheming and kind of like moving these things around. But the sort of like what was almost predestined to happen is going to happen anyway, and there's just all these like complications in between that are more reflections of what the characters are up to and how they perceive themselves and the world and the importance of themselves. Kind of like you were saying with the Simon Foster character, meat puppet, right? He served no purpose. He was just there as like window dressing. Hey, you gonna back me up on this? And well, I and he had nothing to say because he didn't know what the right position he was supposed to be holding was like on this issue,
because no one gave him that direction. No one had the hand up.
Right.
I mean, that just goes to show. I mean, like, what are these people outside of just faces and mouthpieces? In some instances, it reminded me of another character in Veep. It was kind of the same storyline where what the hell's his name? He's a tall guy in Veep when he's basically becomes the meat
homunculus.
Puppet.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah, exactly. And like in this, you're seeing like, okay, oh, these are all the people in charge, right? I mean, they're the ones on TV telling us that they're in charge. But and then you see the sort of behind the curtain there, and it's no one is acting in those in the ways that they pretend that they are when the cameras are rolling. And we see how ineffective and ineffectual they are. At doing their jobs.
Absolutely ineffectual. Nothing gets done. In fact, they get done or they are all just torn about this meeting that is the future planning meeting, which is clearly the war council that's being like
no, this
hidden.
is the future planning. No.
Future planning, yeah. But unofficially, he's like unofficially, this is a shoe or whatever. This is a glass of water.
But this is a glass of bullshit.
But so now there's a report that goes around that one of the Karen Clark, who's the Assistant Secretary of State for Diplomacy, is against military intervention, and she's working with Liza, who is Anna Klumsky from Veep and from My Girl, and she submitted a report called Post-War Planning, Parameters, Implications, and Possibilities, also known as PIP. Sorry.
Pip. Yeah.
It already had. Which,
easy for you to say.
Which opposes the intervention, opposes war. So this is a contentious document.
Right. So she wrote this like the pros and cons sheet of going to war here, and like all
massive cons.
Yeah, all the cons were 16 pages long, and the pros had all these caveats that were like. It turns out they were all like fake, and so they weren't even pros. It was basically all cons. And then as we see with David Rashi character, the guy who was in Burn After Reading in this movie, also in Veep, he's like, okay, let's take this report and let's take out all the bad stuff. Okay, great. And like now here's our justification for going to war, right? And it was this meaningless political football you go through. Destroy all the records of like it being opposed to and like whatever in this committee. I don't think he meant that, and like they go through and like strike all that stuff out and like
reinterpreting,
right? Just like just jamming through this march to war.
But what the report says is that there's no intelligence that this war makes sense,
right?
And that this intelligence is coming from a source known as Iceman.
Yeah.
It's such bullshit, right? Like,
you can be my wingman any day.
Bullshit. You could be mine. Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
this was really interesting to see, and it was clear. I mean, they're talking about a war in the Middle East. I figured that they were talking about the war in the Middle East, but obviously you're right, they couldn't say that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would just, it all of a sudden it becomes like a historical document or something, and oh no, it's they just fictionalized it. It's a stand-in for this for the events leading up to the Iraq War. All these specifics were wrong, but the general thrust was all correct. It was basically this is a documentary, and where they just changed all the names and whatever, right?
Everyone wanted to get into this meeting, and then everyone actually got into that meeting, and it reminded me of meeting at a lot of the startups that I've worked at that have overinflated meetings.
Exactly.
And nothing can get done.
Which it's funny because they did the same, almost the exact same gag in The Informant, right? When they're trying to get everybody in that conference room. It's like, what? This is the biggest conference room we got? And he's got his finger holding down.
Exactly, I love that.
Like hanging up.
You're telling me that this is the only room that you have available right now?
Yeah.
Oh, it is.
Do you have any suite? Perhaps it's maybe a bit more roomy for us. Okay, so there's not. So this is it. We're here. We're stuck. Okay, then we'll make do. Thank you.
James Gandolfini's in this, and I thought he was incredibly funny in this role, and he played that to a T. He at one point, I think it's Capaldi that calls him this, or Capaldi's character calls him General Flintstone.
Yeah.
And I mean, Gandolfini's not a small guy during this movie by any means, but it was good to see him in a movie again.
Yeah, and he is just like the perfect Iannuccian character, where it's like, it seems like he's gonna do the right thing and whatever, and help put up the roadblocks, and it didn't really work. So I think I'm gonna justify staying here and doing the wrong thing.
I'm not going to resign.
What the fuck, George?
My loyalty is to the kids. I am a soldier.
You're not a soldier. When did you shoot a guy last?
What, just because I haven't shot someone in 15 years, I'm not a soldier?
He self-justifies. It's sort of that same type of character that we were talking about in Burn After Reading, right? It's like this character who's the hero of his story. He can do no wrong, and finds a way to square the circle for himself. In the end there.
I really liked that Steve Coogan made an appearance in this movie, as I called him Paul Wall. He was just some citizen that was pissed off that the office walls that were against his property were on the verge of collapsing into his mom's garden.
Right.
And she had this little greenhouse.
Instead of fixing it or looking into it, they gotta put a little stick on it to hold the wall up. And it was it's like tiny little tree branch.
He goes, I know from my expert perspective, and I'm an expert. It's my perspective that this is not going to hold, and those broken things that they use. But also when he was talking about how he's like, well, can't your mom just back up a little bit and use a hose? He's like, she uses a watering can. I think Steve Coogan's hilarious. But again, this is one of those things where you get this ensemble cast. It's really fast and cuts in between everybody. The jokes are like, you cut out of a joke instantly and you are already into the next. You don't even have time to listen to the next thing, and you're like trying to catch your breath. Oh my God, this movie was fantastic.
Yeah, it's definitely pretty layered there. And, it doesn't let you into what's happening. It's like that almost documentary style that Veep was, where it feels like you're kind of spying on these behind the scenes type of things, but it's also from a omniscient point of view, but it just kind of has that feeling like you're with a documentary crew or something, and it's like things are so rapid fire, like you're saying. It's just like, especially the Peter Capaldi thing, where his character is just absolutely nuts and like
insane.
He has like a Gatling gun for a mouth. He's just like everything he's saying is like so rapid fire. It's nuts. I'm sure like the entire time you're just missing him saying things. Like,
That's what I mean. This is one of those you got to watch 2 or 3 times to get everything.
Right.
I always think like movies like mockumentaries, but like Best in Show or all Christopher Guest stuff. That's a very cool format, and I think this is kind of the next iteration or the current iteration of that, and it's very modern and fast, and it's fantastic. And plus, this one, the messaging behind it is great, as well as Veep. And it does kind of give you that inside look at what's going on, but in a nice, palatable way. You don't need to hear all the real detailed shit. You can get the broad strokes, and then with that air of comedy behind it, it's a little easier to stomach.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and if it wasn't funny, I guess, this would just be extremely depressing. And they didn't even, like in Burn After Reading, for instance, they kind of like had those like more severe moments. This one didn't really have that. It's like obviously what they're talking about intellectually is just unbelievably horrifying.
War.
Emotionally what you're presented with is just like it's all this interpersonal like idiocy, and that like makes it so funny, and it makes it digestible because of that.
They're discussing the amount of troops that they're mobilizing on a child's calculator that talks to them as they're doing it. Like,
right. They'd like go sneak off and have that meeting.
I think that encompasses what you just said.
Yeah, exactly. And like, but just kind of like Burn After Reading, like you are kind of held at an arm's length from the characters a little bit, and it's like everybody is horrible, and so you kind of like have that it's not like you're like following someone like, oh man, you're really feeling for this person or that person. Like, it's mostly just that like all these people are disgusting, and you kind of have to have that ironic remove while you're watching it. It's not a style that I liked even at the beginning of Veep. I remember not liking it at first, because it was like,
really,
it was just like, oh man, everybody sucks. Like, who are you supposed to be following here? It definitely grew on me of just like, okay, you can take a step back from like caring about their position on something or like whatever, and just like watch their interactions with each other, like these horrible people being horrible to each other. And that's kind of what this movie is.
Oh yeah,
it like we said, it kind of set the template for Veep, but it takes that kind of like distance and remove that you normally, or at least I normally don't watch movies in.
I think it really drove home the fact that you should be taking a removal from this film in the last few seconds of the movie. Mm-hmm. The current Secretary of State, Simon Foster, is pushed out. He's fired. And then, that basically he's the one you're following throughout the whole movie. He's fired with no problem. They got a new guy coming in and starting that same day. And can you take this desk? Yeah, go ahead, take this. And it was over. And it was like, I thought, even though it was kind of funny to watch, it was still like very poignant. It's like the next guy's going to come in and do the same thing you're going to do.
Right. Like this machine doesn't stop running. It's like,
no, and next.
We need yeses all the time. And like, yeah.
Man, I can relate.
Yeah, that's kind of like the interesting part that like they did in Informant, where it's like having someone gum up the works there, but it took someone with the insane personality that the Matt Damon character had in order to do that. Like, you know what I mean? Because he's so unself-aware in the Informant, unlike all the characters in the Loop, where they're aware that they need to be watching for themselves and like, oh no, backstabbers are coming all the time. In the Informant, he's still like blissfully idiotic about what is going to happen to him and like, what the end of all this stuff is going to be.
Right. Where does this end?
He's like, I think they're still going to make me a president of the company or whatever, CEO, right?
Mark Whitaker is the craziest character I have ever seen in a movie, and I can't believe that this is based on a true thing. This is based on a true story, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That drives me nuts, and I don't know how crazy this. And they even have that disclaimer at the beginning, so I'm sure they tried to make it a little bit funnier than what really happened in life. So there.
Yeah. Exactly.
So this place, Archer Daniels Midland. Yeah, in Decatur, Illinois, Southern Illinois, during the 90s. Basically, this guy, Mark Whitaker, comes out against the company as they are working with their competitors to create price fixing in the marketplace.
Right. Yeah, so they're removing the competition and everything else. They're just like, okay, here's our competitors. What are you going to do? What are we going to do? Okay, and how much are we going to take of this? And doing this type of mafia stuff, right? And like, but what's funny is like they did such a good job of like getting us into that part of the story
with the science,
and
even
like having like sort of layer by layer, like it being okay. Oh, is it corporate sabotage? Is it this? Is it that? Like, and then as some of the walls were kind of closing in on him in terms of like, the FBI is snooping around now. It's like, okay, then he like pivots to like, oh yeah, there's this price fiction thing, and then tries to pivot away from that. I think we're done with the price fixing now, guys. Like,
something else is going on though.
Right.
You get this like sense that Mark's mind is like constantly going, no matter what situation he's in. He's thinking about something. A lot of times it doesn't have to do with the situation he's currently in. Once it comes down to like his department is failing in this, they need to create lysine, or at least the byproduct of lysine, or the byproduct of corn, which is lysine. Is that correct?
Right.
Something shits out something, and that's how this whole chemistry thing works. And there is a virus that keeps attacking these cells.
They process corn into this product of lysine that then is used for other, commercial, industrial uses, and you
like, see it in basically everything.
There's a problem with that, batch or whatever that they were, doing at the time.
Right. So he needed to solve this, but he was going down the shitter because his department was not solving this, and he couldn't get it off the ground. So he made up some bullshit, and this bullshit just kept going.
And as you kind of like learn throughout the thing is that like, pretty much everything that he says or does is painted with that same brush, right? It's like it's all
everything
these crazy lies, like we've been talking about the whole time. It's like the hero of your own story, and he's Agent 0014. He's twice as cool as James Bond, and he's doing all this shit, and like it like starts with him just trying to cover his ass because whatever time trials they're running on the lysine at the time isn't working, and he's having trouble figuring it out, so he makes up a crazy story to buy him some more time.
Stall. It was a stall tactic.
Then he like gets like involved in the FBI.
Why'd you call them?
Yeah, exactly. The more they dig into it, they're like, okay, well, who is the spy, and like, where's the line, the call coming in from? And like, it turns out, okay, he can't continue to go down this path of lying about this, so he comes up with another thing of like, okay, it's price fixing. Well, it turns out they were doing price fixing, and and then he thought, okay, well, I just wanted to throw them off my trail, and I can after a couple weeks tell them it's over. We're done. We're not price fixing anymore. They said we're not going to do it anymore, so we're good. I think we're good. And like,
after the FBI is knee deep in evidence at this point. That's what you're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. They've already been investigating this. They're taking tapes. He's wired at this point. They've got 200 something tapes on him, and then he's like, "Nah, this is not the priority."
Well, he was like, "Oh, we're changing how we're doing things or whatever," and he's just like,
"We're going full legit." That was
yeah. And then he goes through, does the wire work, recording all these conversations, proving the conspiracy to price fix, as it's kind of like coming together, and the FBI is like coming down on everybody. He's still, like I said earlier, like he's still like, oh, I'm gonna become CEO, right? They're gonna be so happy with me, and like he's just so nuts. And then it like turns out that there was another thing he was like, trying to lie to avoid, which is that he was like embezzling a little money here and there,
skimming a little bit off the top,
right? Which is like planted so early, and you kind of didn't know what was going on at the time. Where it's like he's talking about the made up.
I think the name of it was Nordstrom Kimmy. Was the name of this
Nordstrom whatever the fuck. Yeah.
Shell Corporation basically that was taking cash. Or cash.
Oh yeah,
was
no. It was a totally real organization. It's called Nordstrom Kimmy. It sounds real, right?
I do want to like look back into the story behind this and know if that was the actual name of the Shell Corporation, because that's hilarious.
And then so he's embezzling all this money, and like the amount every time they come back to the FBI, or like the the
7.7
federal
million,
prosecutors or whatever. It's like
9.5 million, and it ended in 11.5 million at the end of the movie. And he's like, well, with interest.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it seemed like he was definitely like compulsive liar. Now, like I know at one point they kind of talked about like, okay, maybe it's his bipolar and whatever, but like okay, but this seems like it's something more about him and the way he acts. I mean, the story about his like parents dying that also turned out to be bullshit, and like like
when you meet his parents and they're like, no, we're fine.
Yeah, his mom was the one of the kids from American Graffiti, that that George Lucas movie no one's ever heard of.
Candy Clark was in American Graffiti,
right? And Matt Damon's mom, yeah, like played by Candy Clark, right? Like American Graffiti. It's like, what are you talking about? Of course, we're still alive. Are you talking to me? It's like,
and then, but that one when his dad found out, because she told him, she's like, he told them we're dead, and he's like, well, why would he say that? Like he was really upset about it. Felt really bad. This one had again a really cool set of characters. When we get Biff that comes out of nowhere, Biff from Back to the Future, and he plays Mark Chevron, the security guy.
Alternate 1985 old Biff. It's like
he still looks like Biff.
Yeah.
But he was actually a pretty nice guy, and he seemed to be doing the right thing right away. He got the FBI involved. He thought that there was some sort of espionage happening within the company, and he like did everything right. And all this time he's like, wait, should we not have tagged all his phones or whatever? And it was like, but he thought he was doing the right thing. And then we get Quantum Leap, Brian FBI Quantum Leap Shepard.
Right, Scott Bakula.
Yeah, Scott Bakula, who's awesome, who's working with Joel McHale as the two FBI agents who, about 3/4 of the way through this movie, cannot stand Matt Damon and want to kick the living shit out of him and cannot.
Well, they want to kick his ass, but they also are trying to protect him, and like he's like doing all he can to to fuck everything up at every turn. I love how Scott Bakula and Joel McHale's fashion and haircuts or whatever, that they just like, you could see that they were feds from across the street. It's like
that sharp part, real tucked in look.
Yeah.
When all this stuff starts going down, they've got him wired up, and Scott Bakula's giving him instruction over instruction. He's like, listen, they're going to try to stick you with their lawyers. You cannot do that. You need to be able to pick your own lawyer. After the third or fourth thing, I know about the lawyer, Brian.
The entire thing unraveled in front of him, but and it's was bound to happen at some point, just based on the fact that he can't stop lying all the time. But the direction that this thing went was probably not what he was wanting to do. But man, how great was the sort of cast on this with all the sort of small roles populated by all these people. We talked about Scott Bakula, Joel McHale, Paul F. Tompkins, and Clancy Brown, Tony Hale, Patton Oswalt was in there, the Smothers Brothers.
Both of the Smothers Brothers too.
Yeah, Ann Cusack, the other John and Joan sibling.
Yeah, she's been in stuff, and I recognize her, but I didn't know she was a Cusack. But now knowing that she's a Cusack, she's totally a Cusack.
That voice, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That thick Evanston voice she had.
But just that look when they're kind of laying it all out that this guy was taking, that they're just like their witness is just getting shit on and trashed, and they're like, we have no fucking case now. This is all done.
Right.
Because that's ultimately what happened, right? He goes to jail for the kickbacks that he was taking, or for that shell corporation. I mean, when in fact they were, the FBI were trying to make a case out of him against this corporation. However, it all backfired because no one could take him seriously, and he's obviously fabricating this whole thing, because he's fabricated everything throughout this, right, except that one thing.
Because what hasn't he? Yeah, exactly.
Right. He's surrounded by lies with this one little nugget of truth that he can't really get out and expose because of all the other lies.
Right.
Yeah, I thought this was hilarious, man. And I can't believe that for 2.5 years he was working as this informant, and that means 2.5 years you need to keep up this bullshit, what the hell?
Yeah, but I'm sure there were stressors on the real person's life, and who knows how accurate some of these things are. So
yeah,
right. But in the movie, the character as presented just cannot stop lying, and so him leading the dual life and whatever, it's okay, well, that's just what his life is. Like, it's like he's never not been in that situation, at least that we've seen on screen. Didn't you get the sense that maybe his wife thought his parents were dead and that he was adopted too?
I feel like she came to a lot of realizations during these events that she wasn't too familiar with, and because he was so like
that
smooth
scene was
lying.
Actually, really great. Like where
when she told him to stop,
getting caught, lying to the FBI again, and the guy's like, no, I proved this, I proved that, I proved this, I proved that, and we keep getting like little snippets of what he's about to say in voiceover, and then he says it or says something slightly different. And then you're right. And then she tells him, just stop, Mark. Right?
She was always there for him. Throughout the entire thing, she never gave up on him. And even the end, when he's, coming out of jail finally, I guess he was in there probably a few years, 10 years or something, or 5 years.
It was kind of a light sentence, but yeah. Like I think they talk about it. I can't remember what it was, like three years or whatever.
But by the time he gets out of there, he looks terrible. He's bald. He's overweight. He's like just not doing too good.
He was bald the whole time, but like and they kept subtly showing that, like him adjusting his wig.
Yeah, and I mean he would really get in there and really move it around too. Matt Damon really fell into this character.
But what was the deal? Like Matt Damon's hair is so fucking thick that they needed to build him a giant cone head to put that bald cap on top of. It's like like his head was so huge on top. Like when they showed that he was bald, to put the bald cap on, it seemed like they had to build his head up. It was like the guy in Dawn of the Dead who gets his head cut off of the helicopter.
Like Frankenstein
head,
this
giant like Frankenstein, extension,
big flat head, flat top. You'd think that at this point, directors that are paying or at least getting these actors on screen for millions of dollars, they could probably have them shave their head for 3 weeks.
Well, probably not. But the thing is, also, it'd be a scheduling thing, right? You'd shoot the bald scene at one, in the middle of the schedule. He's got to have hair in the next scene, and da-da-da-da. But yeah.
Schedule it better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's all it is.
It's easy.
But like I was saying, like he gets out of jail and his wife is still there to meet him. She never leaves him, even during all this. She has no idea if this guy's even being forthright with her with anything at this point, and she's still there to support. And I thought that was pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean, well, who knows? The guy embezzled $11 million, and he'll never have to work again. It's comfortable. Who knows? Who knows what we actually didn't know much about the wife's character, or like,
no.
She was constantly sort of prodding him to stop lying, or she was like being skeptical of some of his lies and whatever. But we don't know a whole lot about her, or like what was making her tick outside of that.
I feel like The Informant and Burn After Reading are very, very close in tone and feeling. Especially like the amount of confusion.
Well, tone-wise, I would disagree, just because like in Burn After Reading, there's like so many like moments of that really severe, like the heavy music and like the really, really dark stuff that was happening there. Like this one kept it pretty light the whole time. But yeah, I because you were in the dark about Matt Damon's character the entire time, actually, like even when some of these things were revealed, it's like, well, you don't know how much of that was actually really revealed. Matt Damon's character didn't like sort of learn anything or whatever. It's like it wasn't like you were in on him in that sense, despite the fact that like that one scene that I was talking about earlier, where it's like you hear his voiceover and everything. It feels like they were trying to get to like, okay, he realizes what was happening to him or whatever, but it was more so like that scene was just exploring what it was like to be him and having to come up with the next lie. But it's not as if we kind of see him grow or learn or whatever. Just like all the other movies, kind of like you're saying, Burn After Reading, whatever, there is that sort of distance to it, that ironic distance to this character, and to everyone else in his orbit, where you as the audience, we're not like let in on what's happening, and we don't get to like have the catharsis or whatever for that character, if he did end up learning something, or if he's, who knows. But like, it seems as though he didn't. And, we take that ironic view of this, and although it keeps the audience at a distance, it does allow for this something interesting, which is that like the sort of like exploration of that character, without being distorted by the character's own perception of himself. You know what I'm saying? So like, we as the audience are removed from that character the entire time, and we get to see him as a fraud the entire time, as things are just being revealed to the people around him. If we knew him all along or whatever, and you kind of knew what he was into, and the real reason he confided in the FBI in the first place about the price fiction was to, maybe have them not pay attention to his embezzlement or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the only reason he had to bring up the embezzlement later was that the Clancy Brown character, the psychopathic lawyer who also successfully defended the perpetrators of the My Lai massacre, which they kind of just quickly threw out there. Oh my God!
Just gave him his little accommodation.
Yeah.
And that's
like,
what you'd know him for.
Yeah. And he ended up finding, with accounting, okay, that Mark was the Matt Damon character was stealing this money. So that was the only reason he had to kind of bring that up. Anyway, just like the characters in the Loop, characters in Burn That for Reading, we're kind of held at this distance or whatever. And that was one of the things that when I first saw this movie, I really, really didn't like about it. Also because I was familiar with the This American Life story that, I guess also inspired Scott Burns to write The Thing in the first place. And in that story, at least what they present in the radio story is they try to get into some of that insight with that character. Now, the way that Burns wrote the character, it makes it seem as though literally everything he says is something to be doubted because it's most likely a lie. The impression of the This American Life story was that the audience got to know this character and see him grow or whatever through this experience, and because maybe they didn't do that in this, and it held it at that ironic distance the entire time. I wasn't as into it. But this time around, I definitely liked it a lot more. It's, not one of Soderbergh's best movies, or whatever, but it's still pretty good. And I think even out of the three, I ended up liking this one the best.
Really?
Strangely enough, yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. And this is one that you've seen all these before, but this is one that you specifically said you didn't really care for.
Yeah.
Before we were talking about, yeah.
Totally.
That's awesome. I mean, I think that's great. I think that this is, part of why we're doing this.
Yeah.
I'd have to go with In the Loop as being my favorite in terms of movies for this.
Because your stomach still hurts from laughing.
I feel like I did an ab workout, man.
Yeah.
Because it's hilarious. I mean, it's just seeing how well these people do in these improvisation type situations, and that's what blows me away. And again, the technical feasibility of a movie like this blows me away as well. There's no way that they can film like this without proper planning, because it is on the fly, but everything is so, captured properly. In focus, nothing is missed. There's the things that happen off screen are just little quippy lines that are just there to tickle you almost, and it just, it really does tickle me.
The second or third time you see it, you'll
catch them.
Pick up on that one, pick up on this one. It's I found myself rewatching Veep, I think probably earlier on in this year, when starting the quarantine or whatever, and doing it again, you pick up on all these things you didn't see maybe the first time you were watching it or whatever, and just kind of ingesting the sort of surface of it, and then all those little jokes and all the little stabs and the insane turns of phrase that he gets his improv actors to kind of help deliver.
I hope you can play the spoons, because you're too old to going back to being a gentleman's fluffer, aren't you?
I wonder how much of that is improv. I've seen some of the behind the scenes on Veep, or what do they call the outtakes, where you see them try different line readings of insulting Jonah, the extremely tall guy, or whatever else. Yeah. They come up with some really crazy ways to get at him. But it's funny. I wonder how much of that is scripted and how much of it's improvised. Were some of the best lines out of the Peter Capaldi guy were they all improv? It's all him?
If he came up with all of that himself, hats off, man. The stuff that he came up with was again, no sense to even try to impersonate at this point, because it was just so unique. And you know what? I'm not, for shockingly to myself even, I'm not a Who guy or a Doctor Who guy. And I heard he was a great Doctor Who. And now after watching this, I'd love to see that guy in a different role now, because he stole this movie for me. By far.
You won't like the Doctor Who character as much. You're like, no,
damn it. I'm going to watch it in the loop again.
Yeah, he wasn't just completely like eviscerating someone verbally.
Oh, yeah, we had a couple instances of Veep all over this place. The Informant had Tony Hale as the lawyer that was trying to help Mark Whitaker out until he said, well, they don't really go into this, but I'm assuming he just said, you have no case. Gonna have to let you go here, or I'm gonna have to quit the case.
No, the Mark Whitaker, the Matt Damon character, fired him because he wasn't getting,
and he wanted the
best
personal injury
plea
lawyer
deal that he thought he could get, and so he got the Hawaiian shirt, like I don't know what that guy was, like ambulance chasing weirdo.
He was absolutely an ambulance chaser. That's what he was. Yeah.
I love how okay, so we got a lot of Veep alums here, but then we also have a lot of, or I guess future Veep alums. In all these movies we have a lot of the Ocean's 11 cast represented, with Burn After Reading in particular, Brad Pitt, George Clooney, and then we got Matt Damon. And what was also interesting was I can't wait to end up doing Michael Clayton, which we originally kind of talked about for some of the whistleblower stuff. It too has George Clooney and Tilda Swinton in it in very different roles. But that's for another discussion.
Yeah. We should probably wrap it up then. We watched and talked about The Informant with Matt Damon. That's from 2009. In the Loop, also from 2009. The first not rated film that wasn't some Italian horror film, by the way. Let's bring that up. And Burn After Reading.
You said it wasn't rated?
Yeah, the version of the film that I watched was NR, not rated.
Huh. Wow.
I felt like I was watching something dirty, man.
Yeah.
And the last film that we watched was Burn After Reading. We are going to come back next week with another special show, what do you know, about ghost stories, specifically gothic horror. And this is going to be the 1961 film The Innocents, the 1963 film The Haunting, and 1980s The Shining. That's going to be fun.
For sure. This will be the first Kubrick on the show, right?
Yeah, it is.
And probably his most famous? I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it's either this or maybe 2001.
Yeah.
Even if you haven't seen 2001, you've seen sort of meta products of it. But probably most people who have seen a Kubrick movie have seen at least The Shining, right? In any case, it's there's a lot of interesting things about The Shining, but often think of it as just kind of a straight horror movie, or it's a haunted house story or whatever. But there's this really interesting connection with another genre of sort of gothic melodrama, and that specific type of thing that they do in the gothic story, which I think we'll be diving into with all three of these films. But it'll be interesting to look at Shining through that lens as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much for listening. Please make sure to subscribe and follow us on all the podcasts and social platforms at the Grindhouse Institute. And to really give us a boost, check us out on Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. This helps us to get noticed. Not sure how the algorithm works, but that's how it works. Thanks so much, everybody. We will be back next week.
Ciao.
I don't think what happened is fair when you look at me compared to Mick and Terry. If you go and hold up your local grocery store, you get maybe 5 years in prison. Mick and Terry held up every grocery store in the world, and they got 3. So you tell me how it makes sense that I get 9. And I think you should consider that, Mr. President, when reviewing this request for pardon.